For physical abuse, the physical abuse is any act that, regardless of the intent, results in a non-accidental physical injury to a child. It can happen when a parent is frustrated or angry and strikes, shakes, or even throws a child. Physical abuse may be something also like an intentional deliberate assault, such as burning the child, or biting or cutting, maybe even twisting of limbs. Now, all children get bumps and bruises, but it's important to recognize when those bumps and bruises may be the indication that there's physical abuse rather than just normal childhood roughhousing. But in all cases, consider the context. Take into the account the child's explanation of the injury, the child's age and behavioral changes you notice in the child. Now, some of these following signs may indicate true physical abuse. Questionable bruises and welts or other injuries on the face, around the lips and the mouth, on the torso, the back, the buttocks and the thighs, in various stages of healing. In other words, the bruises might be different colored, reflecting the shape of the object used to inflict the injury. In other words, an electric cord or belt buckle, you might be able to see that mark. Consistent with human bite marks. Questionable burns like a cigar or cigarette burns, especially on the soles, palms, and the back or buttocks. Sometimes we even see immersion burns, sock-like, glove-like burns where they've put the baby or the child into the hot water, donut-shaped burns on the buttocks or genitalia. Burn patterns that are like electric stove burners, where they're round and circular, or an iron. Rope burns on arms and legs, necks, or torso. Questionable fractures to the skull, the nose, the face. In various stages of healing, these all could indicate physical abuse. So the questionable cuts and scrapes, either to the mouth or to the lips, the gums, or the eyes, to the external genitalia, could all be indicators of that type of abuse. Some behavioral indications might be being uncomfortable with physical contact, being wary of adult contact, being apprehensive when other children cry. They may show behavioral extremes like aggression or withdrawal. They may be frightened of the parents themselves, being afraid to go home, arriving at school early or staying late, as if afraid to be at home, reporting being hurt by a parent, complaining of soreness or moving uncomfortably, wearing clothing inappropriate to the weather to cover the body, chronically running away from the home. We see this especially with adolescents. They may be reluctant to change clothes for gym activities, attempting to hide injuries or bruises. So how do you tell the difference between discipline, which is normal, and abuse? It's important that there be some distinguishing things between corporal punishment and abuse. Corporal punishment, such as spanking, may be used as a discipline technique by parents or guardians to teach appropriate behavior. Discipline is a learning process. The goal is to teach appropriate behavior. Abuse is not a learning process. The goal is to stop behavior by inflicting pain, and this is usually a result of anger and frustration. So, how do you tell the difference between abuse and accidental injury? Well, abuse and accidental injury can look similar, but there are important differences. Cuts and bruises caused from accidents normally occur in bony areas of the body, like the elbows and the knees. Accidental injuries to soft tissue areas like the stomach and buttocks are less likely. If an injury happens often, it's less likely to be an accident. If multiple injuries are present, especially if they're in different stages of healing, it's less likely to be an accident. If a series of injuries appear in a pattern or resemble an object like an electrical cord, wooden spoon, the injury may have been inflicted. If the child's caregiver's explanation for the injury is inconsistent with the facts, then the injury would be a suspect. Here's an example. Steve, a 10-year-old boy, arrived at school with bruises on his elbows and a large scrape on his knee. So you ask him what happened. And Steve says, I got hurt when I was riding my bike and I hit a curb. I fell on the road. He says that his father gave him a spanking because his father had told him not to ride on the road. Steve's father stated the same exact thing when he picked Steve up from school, and Steve was glad to see his father. See, in this situation, abuse would not be suspected. Steve's injuries are consistent with his explanation. His father's explanation was the same, and the injuries are on the exposed bony areas, not soft areas of his body. Steve behaved normally with his father and had no bruises or injuries from the corporal punishment, again indicating this was probably not abuse. Now, here's a second example. You notice that Susie, a 9-year-old, is trying to hide from the other girls in the locker room when she changes into her gym t-shirt. And you notice that she has bruises on her upper arms and on the soft areas and strap-shaped whelps and bruises on her lower back in various stages of healing. When you question her about it, she says, well, I fell down the stairs. She's very afraid that you might ask her mother about it. See, now in this situation, you should suspect abuse. Susie's secrecy, her fear of her mother being called, the bruises on the upper arms and soft areas, the specific injury pattern, and the evidence of various stages of healing are all multiple indicators of possible abuse. We're not trying to get anybody in trouble that shouldn't be. We're just trying to help those who are being abused.